Okay, so then this video is leading up to September 11th, and I think we'll be covering it in this video. 1999, Al-Qaeda, the group led by Osama bin Laden, they attack an American ship called the USS Cole whenever they blew a gigantic hole in the boat with a bomb that was attached to a boat. They drove it or sailed it right into the USS Cole and blew a massive hole. It did not actually sink the ship, but it damaged the ship where it was out of commission for a couple of years. Another attack was September 11th, 2001. There it is, folks. These radical Muslim terrorists wanted to destroy the American economy. That was the point. So they went after our World Trade Center. And they also had two other targets, the Pentagon, and we don't know what the third target was. It might have been the White House, it might have been the Capitol building, but it was definitely Washington, D.C. It was headed towards then. But that plane would never make it. That was flight 93 or 73. I think one of those. Anyway, the passengers on board the fourth flight figured out that they were going to be flown into a building, so they tried to retake it, and they ended up, the terrorists ended up crashing the plane into a field in Pennsylvania. So, I remember the day very well, folks. September 11th, 2001. We have the first building was one of the trade centers, the World Trade Centers. It was hit by a huge 767, okay, Boeing airliner. And at that moment, when the first building got hit, nobody in America knew that this was a terrorist attack. In fact, we all thought it was an accident that had occurred. And I remember I was sitting in Miss Prevost class, which she doesn't work here anymore. But today it would be Miss Tejeda's class. But Miss Tejeda wasn't there. Anyway, and one of our substitutes ran into the room and she said, "The Pentagon's been bombed." And then she ran away. And we were like, nuclear? Or what are you talking about here, right? So Mr. Bellard came on the announcements. Surprise, surprise. And whenever he did, he said, "Everybody, please stop teaching. I want you to turn on your televisions. American history is happening right now, and I want these kids to experience it." So all day long we watched, and as I was watching live on television, the second tower, we saw an airplane coming in, and the second tower got hit. And then the day went on, and we switched classes and went from class to class, and in our next class we saw the first tower fall. It collapsed, followed very shortly by the second tower. And the Pentagon had been hit as well, and it was a terrible day in American history. Over 3,000 people dead. And we got some pictures here. This is the second tower being hit right here. This is the rubble after. This is the Pentagon right there. By the way, the terrorists had no idea how big the Pentagon was. They thought that one plane was going to destroy the whole thing. Guys, the Pentagon is a building that houses 50,000 government workers. It's a huge structure. It barely put a dent in the Pentagon, you know. It just destroyed one little part of one building. As time went on, they dug out the remains of Ground Zero, all this rubble, and they installed this memorial. This is the 9/11 memorial. And at nighttime, they turn on a huge flashlight that's at the bottom of this, and then you get treated to this, the ghost towers, okay? Now, today, it's 25 years later almost, and we have rebuilt the Trade Center. It's not the same two big boxy buildings we used to have. It's called the Freedom Tower now. And the Freedom Tower is exactly 1,776 feet tall. Think about that. Think about why. I'm not going to tell you, okay? 1,776. All right. Moving on. Now, on that day, President Bush got some criticism because President Bush, when he found out, this is the moment that he found out that we were under attack, this guy walks up to Bush and all he said was, "Mr. President, we're under attack. America's under attack." And that's all the details he gave the president at the time. President Bush who was reading to a group of first graders, decided to finish the book before he actually got up and left. And that got a lot of criticism for him. Days after the September 11th attacks, George Bush went down to Ground Zero where the actual attack occurred at the World Trade Center, and he stood on a pile of rubble and he addressed the whole nation. Because they didn't have any electricity running out there, he didn't have a PA system, so all he had was a bullhorn. And he gave a very good speech. And during the speech, one of the crowd members said, "Mr. President, we can't hear you." And he grabbed the megaphone and he said, "Well, I can hear you, and the people that knock down these buildings are soon going to hear from all of us." And that was basically the beginning of the war on terror, which would last the next 20 years. All right, so 9/11 will exhibit a number of similarities to Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. Both resulted in the death of thousands while creating a surge in patriotism. Guys, I remember one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen in my life. September 12th, the day after September 11th, 2001. Everywhere you went in Church Point, everywhere you went in Lafayette, everywhere you went all around this country, there were hundreds and hundreds of American flags flying everywhere. Everybody in America was proud to be an American, and they were nicer to each other for about 6 months. And then the political bickering started and things went back to normal. But it was a good time to be an American. Not the attacks, but the aftermath after was a good time to be American. So, which statement about the similarities between the Japanese raid on Pearl Harbor in 1941 and the terrorist attacks of September 11th is not true? Okay, so we're looking for the false one here. We got to go through all four of them. Here we go. Both were devastating attacks on American soil. I would say so. Okay, both resulted in the death of thousands of American citizens. True story. Both were attacks made against American ideals. Okay, that doesn't ring true. Here's why. Okay, for September 11th, the terrorists attacked us because they hated our way of life and they wanted to destroy our economy. That is an attack against American ideals. All right, ideals, basically ideas, means the same thing. But what about Pearl Harbor? Why did the Japanese attack us at Pearl Harbor? It wasn't because they hated America. You should already know the answer. It's because we cut off their oil supply and they had to find a new oil supply before they ran out, or they would not be able to wage war. Okay? So C is the correct answer right here. All right? All right, President George W. Bush identifies Osama bin Laden as the leader of the attack and demands Afghanistan's Taliban turn him over to the U.S. or face attack. The Taliban refused, and so we invaded Afghanistan. We invaded the very country that used to be our ally, and we started to fight them, okay? Years and years later, during the Obama administration, we found Osama bin Laden, and we found them, he was hiding in Pakistan, which was an ally of the United States of America. We had been paying Pakistan to be our friend, billions of dollars for years and years and years. And they did not tell us that Osama bin Laden was living in their capital city. Okay? So, I give full credit to President Obama. He went in, he got SEAL Team 6 to go in there and, give Osama the old bullet there. Now, we didn't want to actually give the body of Osama bin Laden to the Muslims because we figured that they would make a big shrine and this would be a place for terrorists to come and congregate. So instead, we wrapped him up in linen cloths and we chucked him into the ocean. And Osama bin Laden has become shark poo, okay, by this point. He got eaten by the sharks there. President George W. Bush orders we're going to go back to Bush now, okay? We're going to get away from Obama. President George W. Bush orders a freeze on all financial assets of these terrorists, okay? He also calls for an international freeze, and 80 other countries also freeze their money as well. So a couple of things here. We have now a new department in the federal government because of 9/11, is the Department of Homeland Security. And they are given the responsibility of protecting the U.S. from terrorist activities, okay, and natural disasters as well. Among other agencies, it took control over, among the agencies, it took control over to include the Transportation and Security Administration. Man, that's worded badly. Okay, TSA, Transportation Security Administration. These are the people that check you out at the airport, okay? They check for bombs, they check for contraband, whatever, and you have to deal with them every time you take a flight. Now, that's enough on that. You guys know what the TSA is. All right, moving on. Which fundamental challenge is routinely faced by TSA, the Transportation Security Administration? Let's see. So these are the people that get you on and off of airplanes. They handle security. What's their main challenge? That's what the question is. Let's see. This one looks pretty good right here. The need to balance safety with efficiency and privacy. So they have to check people out. Can they check everybody out? No. It would take forever. All your flights would be delayed. So they have to be efficient. They have to honor your privacy, hopefully. They're not going to do strip searches in the middle of the airport, right? And they also have to maintain safety as well, okay? So a couple of things here. President George W. Bush obtains the passage of the Patriot Act, which allows for the bending of the Fourth Amendment restriction against illegal searches to increase electronic surveillance of groups associated with terrorism. The Patriot Act basically said the government has the right to spy on you if they suspect that you have anything at all to do with terrorism. And it could be that you're not a terrorist at all, you have nothing to do with the terrorist, but your third cousin's a terrorist. So now they can read all of your emails, all of your texts, and stuff like that. It was a massive overreach of the government at this time. 2001, okay, the next month, a Florida newspaper editor dies from anthrax. So there was an anthrax terrorist. Anthrax is a biological agent, folks. It infects you and kills you very rapidly. And people were mailing anthrax to congressmen in the mail. And I think it was 5-10 people died or something like that. I remember the old boy from Church Point. He thought it was going to be a funny thing to take some flour, put it in an envelope, and put that in his ex-girlfriend's mailbox. He ended up getting a visit from the FBI, okay? So it's nothing to play with there. All right, use the quote to answer the question. On September 11th, enemies of freedom committed an act of war against our country. This is President Bush, by the way. Americans are asking, who attacked our country? The evidence we have gathered all points to a collection of loosely affiliated terrorist organizations known as Al-Qaeda. The enemy of America is not our many Muslim friends. It is not our many Arab friends. Our enemy is a radical network of terrorists and every government that supports them. Our war on terror begins with Al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated. Okay, which action is least likely related to the remarks in the quote? Okay, let's see. So which one doesn't fit? Overthrowing the Taliban-led government of Afghanistan. That's a terrorist group. That's very likely. That's a good answer. Increasing the use of drones to bomb targets in other countries. Yeah, we bomb other countries with drones now because of the September 11th attacks. Creating the Department of Homeland Security. Yes, to protect America. Supporting rebels in Libya who sought to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi is not a radical Muslim. Muammar Gaddafi, I'm not expecting you guys to know this, Muammar Gaddafi is a secular Muslim king, basically. He was an oil king. Eventually, he's going to be overthrown by his own people and murdered and beaten to death. But in this case, Muammar Gaddafi had nothing to do with September 11th, 2001. Okay?